It should be live here in about less than 10 seconds. Yep.
Okay, I'll call the select board to order at 6:03 for purposes of a public hearing on amendments to the land use ordinance and a new ordinance referring to putrescible waste, also known as the junkie yard ordinance. I shouldn't be so flip about it. How shall we proceed?
Like the agenda states, you would do the land use first, I think is the organization, and then junkie yard after that. You've called the select board to order. You will ask for any sort of comments from the public for those in favor, those opposed, and then those neither for nor opposed. And I think the way that we do it through the YouTube comments, I'll monitor those. I don't think that we should kind of limit. If a comment comes in, a comment should be read, not necessarily in the order of those opposed, against, or in favor, against, neither for nor against, but just reading any sort of comments from folks. But that's the kind of normal course.
Okay, are there comments for items not on the agenda, because this is a select board meeting?
None.
Was just wondering about the audience.
I'll keep monitoring that, Walter. We have one individual watching right now and have no comments, but I'll split my screen and keep an eye on any sort of comments, and I'll raise the hand and interject.
Okay, so Jeff, can you give us an overview of the amendments, the changes?
Yeah, I'll summarize it by saying almost all of it is either formatting, grammar, edits of spelling, and adjusting some of the language to match new state language. But I'll go through each one of them very briefly. I'm not going to read them all. But in the old ordinance, the very beginning of it was a list of all the changes that have been made. So if you opened it to read it, you would read into it, and you would be seeing stuff from 10, 15, 20 years ago before you got to the meat that was the current document. So we now have moved that to an appendix or an attachment. We also have put as part of the attachment the land use map, and that's the first change as you go through the document itself. So attachment A is attaching the land use map to the ordinance. The next change is on applications, and basically it permits the CEO to create. Oh, I've lost my video again, haven't I?
Yep.
Can you still hear me?
We can hear you, yes, Owen.
All right. Allows the CEO to build a permitting application package and attach it to the ordinance as she sees fit or he sees fit. We also changed some of the language on administering permits, made it clearer when the CEO had authority and when the planning board had authority. It was pretty much gobbled up before, and so we just kind of clarified that.
And Jeff, I hate to interrupt, but we do have one comment, and I think that I should read it. So Penny said that I worry that this is not a good way to have a public hearing with the time lag. My comment is now too late. I'll just remind everyone, this is clearly not the way that we want to do a public hearing. This is in response to COVID and gathering distances and concerns from folks. I think Penny says, I think residents who would like to participate should be invited to join the Zoom meeting to allow live participation. I'll just remind folks that you can offer any comments at any time. I think the chair, I don't want to speak for the chair, but I think the chair would entertain comments at any time in favor or in opposition, or neither for nor against. And again, this is clearly not the way that we would want to do it, but this is allowable under the current law structure, and it's the best that we can do with all the public health issues. So if folks have comments, please offer them at any time. I'll interject and try to have them read, and folks can respond.
Well, let me, Penny's point is well taken and well expressed. We did, just to put this in context, we felt that this set of changes was, shall I say, innocuous. It was housekeeping, cleanup, formatting, and not the kind of thing that would draw an awful lot of debate and discussion about the validity and the go, no go. As opposed to the four other articles, we're going to hear about one tonight, but it is not on the warrant for town meeting. And so we may have another hearing on that one before the March 2021 meeting. And our logic with regards to the 3 Guilford Butler articles and the putrescible waste article was that they would all spur up some amount of debate and discussion, and that we didn't want to subject them to the limitations of the Zoom meeting and whatever restraints we're going to have at town meeting. So we made a conscious exception to that for this, and we'll see how it goes. Jeff, sorry to take your presentation away from you.
No problem at all. But I do agree with you. This one, there is nothing that is of great significance. There is one change that was made that would have an effect on people who want to put up a tower or build a building. But for the most part, the rest of it is housekeeping. For example, the next one is allowing the select board, matter of fact, not allowing, it kind of prods the select board to periodically establish and publish a schedule of fees and fines, and then making that schedule an attachment to this. And it also asks the planning board to periodically create and update a template or checklist for use in the review of special exceptions, and attaching that document to this ordinance as well. And then we go through several pages where we're not making any changes. We did change under the land use table of land uses, which is on page 11. The state changed, they used to call automobile graveyards and junkyards the same thing. The same term was used for both of them. They have now defined them separately and differently. So part of our change to this was to add those definitions to the document, and then in the table of land uses to add junkyard or automobile graveyard to the uses. But we didn't change any of the whether you could or you couldn't. That stayed the same. And then again, the only real, I would call kind of substantive change was on page 12, the maximum building height for a residential building. It used to be 34 feet, except in shoreland zone. Our shoreland zone ordinance has it at 35 feet. So we changed the land use ordinance to match the shoreland zone to make it 35 everywhere. And then on page 14 is the definition, the new definition of automobile graveyard, which is taken directly from Title 29A. And that prompted some of the changes, and the reason we wanted to get on with this was because of that change by the state. And then on page 16, we did the same thing for junkyards. So now it does not include automobile graveyards. And that is it in a nutshell. And again, I am speaking to present it, but I'm also in favor of these ordinance changes. And I would like to say, if there's anybody from the public out there, over the next couple months, we're going to start in earnest some serious ordinance changes, the Ordinance Review Committee, some things that are long overdue, but are substantive. And I think we'll be lucky to have it by next year's town meeting. It may very well be the one after that. But we are looking at incorporating things from the comprehensive plan and some other areas that we're not in error, but there are better ways of doing some of the things we're doing in our ordinances. So if anybody has any input or would like to be a part of that process, please give me a call and let me know. Thank you.
And who are you working with? Who's your ordinance review subcommittee or group today, Jeff?
Well, right now, Gabe, I think Gabe's the only one from the subcommittee that is here. Let's see, we also have, I think I have a list of, I don't even
You've
have.
got Ed, you have Ed Modell.
Yep, Ed
Ralph-
Modell on it.
Ralph Demmons, John Snow, Gabe, you, and I might be missing someone else.
Yeah, I think there's 5, so I think you're right.
Well, thank you. Thank all of you folks for your work on this. And as Jeff mentioned, this is only the beginning. I guess the hard stuff comes later. Although you had to, that automobile graveyard section, all that yellow is pretty extensive. So any comments out there, Owen?
No, just the ones from Penny, and I'll just reiterate again, this is not the format of which anyone really desires. And then she did have a comment about participation directly by citizens on Zoom. The difficulty with that is if we widely broadcast the credentials to enter the meeting, we open ourselves up to be Zoom bombed. And so again, this is not preferable, but it's allowable under the law, and it gets us where we need to go.
Well, I think we can discuss that. I agree with her. And as you know, I've been in the Zoom complete camp all along. And there are ways to mitigate against Zoom bombing, and Zoom has done a lot of work on their security. So it's a different platform now than it was when they started. Let's hope that the need to use it gets minimized over time. But should it not go away, I would be in favor of getting rid of the YouTube use and do the Zoom thing. Any comments or questions from the Zoom attendees? So I think the select board has voted in favor of this. We don't, but we put it on the warrant. So do we have to do anything else?
No, no, you just give everybody an opportunity to comment, ask questions. And,
Right.
and there are substantive changes to make changes if required.
Right.
And Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, there is an opportunity so the whole point of a public hearing is if something's been overlooked, or if someone has a great thought on things that could be changed, we could amend this proposed ordinance prior to town meeting. We just have to post the final product no later than 7 days before. So the whole point of this public hearing is, hearing from the public. Do they have concerns? Do they want to see changes and alterations? And then the board can determine whether they want to act on those or not. So there is an opportunity to amend these things based on public input.
So I have a suggestion about the putrescible waste, and it ties into Penny's suggestion. Yes, Owen.
Just we're having a public hearing just on the proposed land use ordinance changes.
Oh,
When
we gotta
when
adjourn
we
that.
get done with that, we'll move on to solid waste and we can talk that ad nauseum.
Thank you for the point of order. So I think the hearing is concluded then.
Concur.
I think you want to emphasize, as you already have, that we would take public input, throughout the process here, even if it's as we move on to the next ordinance.
For this meeting.
Right.
Yes, keep the Zoom line open for people to comment. Owen, yeah. Okay, how do we adjourn out of this and go to the next?
Just call for the public hearing on, you've had a public hearing for both ordinances. You're just now switching from the prior to the current.
Okay, now we'll take up the junkie yard ordinance, but let me make a suggestion. And it ties to Penny's point. This is not going to be presented in the warrant. It will go before the town at a special town meeting should one come up in the fall, or more likely the March 2021 town meeting. We thought by putting this out for a hearing now, we would get that behind us. But on second thought, I think we can ask for comments, but I would plan on a rehearing or another hearing on this in particular during the preparation for town meeting 2021. And hopefully that will have wide participation, or there will be the ability for wide public participation. Does that make sense to folks?
I agree, Walt. Mr. Sherrill.
Yeah, I agree too, Walt. I just want to point out, Sonia is on Zoom group chat, and she says trying to call in but cannot unmute. Sonia here. Copy of land use ordinance did not come with email, nor is it online. I don't know if everybody can see that, but
Yeah, I just responded to her on chat.
okay.
It is online. It's been there for quite a while. I think what it says is highlighted February draft copy is how it is online. She mentioned that it did not accompany the warrant or the mailing that we did, and because it's more than 10 pages, it is not required to be part of the warrant or accompany that, just as long as it's available at the town office. So it is good.
Yep, and we put it as a permanent fixture on the home page. So on the home page, and not changing with the announcements that we do periodically, is the warrant, the proposed land use ordinance changes, and the junkyard ordinance. They're all right on the home page. And Penny had another comment, which was, I feel we must have another public hearing for the junkyard ordinance much closer to the vote. At this point, there are only 3 people watching. So she seems to agree.
Is that the only comment?
Yes, we've had 3 comments and they've all been from Penny and I've read them.
Okay. I would broadcast out that we will take comments then and questions about that for a few minutes. But I think Cheryl's in agreement. I don't know about, I didn't hear about Jan about a public hearing, a formal public hearing on the junkyard ordinance as part of our prep for 2021 town meeting.
Yeah, I have no objection to that, Walt. There's no hurry with this ordinance, so we can give it whatever due public access it needs.
Owen.
And just real quick, I'm not sure why Sonia can't voice through the Zoom platform, but just for the public to potentially chew on prior to maybe another public hearing on the junkyard, Irv was a member of, or is a member of the planning board, and he was a party to all the discussions about the junkyard ordinance. So I would just maybe invite Irv to share some of his thoughts about how planning went and evaluated this and any sort of changes that they made. Definitely don't want to speak for planning board, but there was an effort made by them to make sure that we did this to fit well for South Thomaston, or as well as we could. They looked at fishing gear and trying to exclude certain items that are just kind of historical industries that this town does. And so, Irv, I can unmute you if you want to provide any comments, or you can hit the unmute button yourself if you had any input that you wanted to provide. Or not.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just, basically we went all, through the trash and stuff in the front yards and backyards and the garbage and all the unsightly stuff that happens in town that the rest of us have to look at. And, to have a way for the code enforcement to regulate it. As far as the fishing gear goes, as long as it's stacked neatly, it's not a problem either. If it's all over somebody's yard, then, it falls under the same as any unsightly trash or, rubbish or that somebody might have. That's all. I don't have it in front of me exactly, the ordinance, but that's what I recall we talked about.
Okay, questions for Irv? Okay, do I need a motion to table this?
No, a public hearing is a public hearing. I guess the tabling is the fact that we didn't put it on the warrant. You make it active when you place it on that warrant and ask the town to weigh in on it. So
Okay.
us not placing it on the warrant is basically tabling it.
Okay, so I think we're done here.
Agree.
Move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Cheryl?
Aye.
Jan?
I was just going to ask if there was any further comments, Owen, before we close out.
Oh, good idea.
Not from YouTube land. I did see that Jeff unmuted himself. I didn't know if he had something he wanted to say in closing.
No, I was just going to say that I agree with you. You don't need to make a motion on this. Public hearing, you're going to have another public hearing, so no comments is okay.
Okay, Jan, aye.
Walter, I thank you all so much for being here tonight, but also the work that you put in. And hopefully we'll see you all at town meeting.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
You won't need the instrument landing system if you drive. Thanks, everyone.